What's up again, YouTube? It's Carpo here. This is Carpo's Life, Episode 1. Might as well start all over, with the other channel deleted or terminated. I'm not going to sit and fight the power. I wrote YouTube and messaged them, and I'll do my best. But really what I wanted to talk about here was dealing with change, dealing with stress, or with things that occur to us without stress, maybe I should say. And one of all the different topics that I talk about on YouTube, my favorite type topics are the, not necessarily the philosophical aspects of life, but rather the really, the mutual aspects of life that we all share. That we all have hard times, that we all have elation, that we're all seeking novelty, that most of us at least fit on some spectrum of these experiences in life. And I think that almost everyone deals with anxiety differently, and everyone has anxiety, or it's very difficult to separate anxiety from just being flustered or being stressed. They can be very similar, but ultimately we're talking about words here, and I don't want to get too far into that. I want to talk about how to cope with it. It's with what's happened to me lately, it's been a test for me, not just the YouTube channel thing. I mean, that's like down on my list of stresses right now, between my business issues and some other things that are going on in life. The only thing that's kept me sane in this last 2 months has been having this bus to work on. And whenever I'm feeling flustered or anxious, I'll just come out here and work on a couple of projects, and it's because carpentry always took me away from that anxiety. And so having something, any type of project, maybe you knit or crochet, maybe you make jewelry, or maybe you work with stones. I have several different hobbies that I'm, interested in, but I don't do any one of them nearly full time. So I end up with a lot of tools for making things and creating things, but there's kind of a catch here, creating things and being creative, making art, helps me to deal with life issues. It just helps me to take the focus off of life and put it onto something else. But at the same time, when I'm anxious, I usually don't have the motivation to actually to do anything, to do any art. I think most artists know that, and I'm not calling myself an artist, but I am an artist. I like to create art. I like to design things. I'm not a painter or a specific category. I just say I'm a creative person and I like to make things. And it's really hard to do that when you're feeling a little bit down. And that's why when I was a carpenter, I went into doing, finish work and fine detail stuff and cabinets, because I like seeing the results and I like the satisfaction of knowing that I've done something. Because life is, just a series of events that happen to us, and while we're going through it, we run into a lot of, like I said, anxiety, I guess. But it doesn't have to be anxiety. It can be morphed into something else. And more than that, one of the things that I've noticed over the years, this is more of a recent discovery in recent years for me, is that sometimes when I'm anxious, I don't even realize that I'm anxious. In other words, I'll find that I can only identify how I'm feeling inside by the behaviors that I exhibit outwards. Such as maybe I'm just going along with my day just fine, and then somebody says something that just sets me off, and I, maybe I get loud or get upset or whatever it might be. I usually am a pretty calm person, and when I do get angry, it's usually because I have to. I have kids, so, if they're not listening, it sucks, because I'm not the kind of person who likes to raise my voice or whatnot. But if I find myself becoming short, then I think, why is that, And often there's an underlying stress that I'm not addressing. So I think for anyone else out there who's having any type of stress in their lives, maybe if you don't have any type of an outlet or a hobby, try to find one. It's like you literally look at it as pent up anxiety. Like, when people talk about that metaphoric release of stress, or a release of excitement, it's a metaphor, but it's literal too. You can feel it within you when you're finally getting over something. Sometimes all it takes is a good laugh, And I'll tell you, it gets harder and harder to laugh. I'm the kind of guy who, if I want to laugh, I'll put on something like absurd, like Family Guy or South Park. Those make me laugh. They're funny to me. But when people put on, say, you name it, the latest, most popular movie with Seth Rogen or whoever, most of them are just not funny to me. I don't really find them as humorous. There's funny parts, and don't get me wrong, there's some pretty funny movies out there, but I found that I like the absurdity, because the absurdity really, I think the reason why I like Family Guy and South Park is because they look at society for what it is. They pick and poke and prod at our ignorance, or our collective stupidity, the way that we behave as people, as individuals. They, everyone's different. That's what I'm getting at. That we all react differently. We all find different things funny. We also all find different things sad. There's no reason for one person to tell another, oh, well, you should think this is funny and not that. However, when it comes to sadness or anxiety, that is something that we all share, but we all are anxious about different things. And while we can't tell people what's funny or what they should be laughing about or what they should be happy about, because we know that that's very subjective. Like, I'm not going to tell you this will make you happy. When we say this is what might help your anxiety, or this is what, that your anxiety might not be legitimate, is what I'm getting at. That any way we feel is legitimate, but we're only harming ourselves if we're, let's say, feeding off of that by going around telling everyone how sad we feel, for example. Playing the victim card is, I guess, what I'm getting at. If we play the victim all the time, it's a good defense mechanism for people to, maybe give us empathy and sympathy, but in the long run, it makes people want to avoid us. Nobody likes to be around the victim type, just like we don't like to be around the aggressive type, and finding that balance is very difficult, and finding a way out of our anxiety is difficult, but sometimes stepping back and saying, am I really stressed about the right things, I think is the most useful thing. So before I go, I'd like to just label kind of what I mean. There's somebody, I don't remember where I heard it, but it was he said he looks at stress in two different ways. It's the circle of influence and the circle of concern. Your circle of influence are things in your life that you can do something about, such as you need to find a job and you don't have one. That's something that's within your hands. Or, you need to make a phone call to deal with something. That's something you can do. But then there's the circle of concerns, the circle of which you can't influence, like you're worried about conspiracies or what might be happening overseas, or, whether or not you're going to get murdered walking down the street, those kinds of things. These are illegitimate, they're legitimate thoughts, but not legitimate fears. If we're always fearing the unknown, then we become xenophobic and we wrap ourselves up and we become divisive. And, division is what's tearing our society apart right now, especially this nation, which is being destroyed by people poking and prodding the fires of our division, which are never as simple as they seem. So everybody's somewhere in the middle, So when it comes to anxiety, sometimes that's induced by our events in life, and sometimes it's induced by our expectations of how things should be. But if they're influenced by what we think another person thinks or think another person feels, if we're making assumptions and that's making us anxious, we've got to get rid of that stress. Just remember, this is it. You've got one life as this person, and do your best and to enjoy it and to not make yourself worry all the time. It's something I don't like to talk about. I like to talk about and discuss because it's so important to talk about stress, but there's no solution to say, oh, this is how you get rid of anxiety. It's much more complicated than that, and we all know it. So it's something that I've had, so I know, and I can speak from my own heart. In my early 30s, I was very anxious, and I was stressed about stupid things. Can I finish this at work, or how am I going to get this done? And, I worked through it, and I know other people can work through theirs too. So have a good day, everyone, and thanks for watching. Talk to y'all later. Don't stress.